Hey, what's up, Inquirers? So the other day I released a part 1 video of the preliminary hearing in which I went over the prosecutor's arguments for why they issued the warrants against the 3 men involved in the Ahmaud Arbery case. Well, today I'm making a video about the defense attorney's arguments against that as to why they think the warrants shouldn't have been issued. As always, this is Inspiring Inquiry. Alright, so in part 1 I went over what the prosecution gave as their reasons for issuing the warrants on Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan. In this video, what I want to go over is the new information that came up whenever the defense attorneys started their cross-examination, as well as what their intentions seemed to be, what their arguments were against the issuance of the warrants. That's what I want to cover in this video. So I'm going to start out with Travis McMichael's attorney, Jason Sheffield, where he starts by asking the special investigator Dial about his case file and whether or not he brought it with him. Dial goes on to say that the case file isn't finished yet because the case is ongoing, so there's a lot of reports that still need to be filed, interviews that need to be had, a lot of different things before it can be a complete case file. So he brought the notes with him, and that's what he's going to be referencing whenever he's answering the questions. The defense attorney asks him, okay, well, what kinds of things are you waiting for to finish up in your case file? So he references, social media records. He references phone records, other phones that need to be obtained, and data that is being retrieved on the devices that they already have. So he asks him, well, what kind of things are on social media? So the special investigator replies that Travis McMichael had made certain comments prior to the shooting about the things that had been happening in the neighborhood. One of those comments given was something to the effect of, they better hope they don't come on this side of the neighborhood. Another one of them was arm up. Now, when making those comments, the defense attorney asks the special investigator what he thinks that he was referencing when making those comments. Special investigator replies that he feels that he was referencing inflicting harm, and that's when the defense attorney clarifies that he wasn't asking in reference to that. He was asking in reference to what events had taken place. And that's when the special investigator clarified that he was meaning the events, the prior reports that had been of trespassings and thefts or burglaries in the neighborhood. Then they discussed the special investigator having a warrant for Travis McMichael's truck, in which he was attempting to obtain access to his toolbox where he had a Confederate flag sticker, and he thought that it would be important to note that sticker in the case report. They go on to discuss for a while how the special investigator became involved with the case, and then he asks him whether or not he is familiar with the letter written by the district attorney, George Barnhill, where they reference that they weren't going to seek any warrants for arrest for the 3 individuals involved in this incident. Then they go over what kind of investigative acts that the special investigator conducted in this investigation. One of them being that he verified with Mr. Englsih that nothing was actually ever taken from the residence. So the defense attorney asks him, well, why do you think that it's important to cover that? And that's when he references the letter from George Barnhill, in which George Barnhill claims that they were responding to a burglary in progress, that they were trying to conduct a citizen's arrest, where he said there is no evidence of a burglary taking place. The fact that Mr. Arbery had been there before and nothing taken, the fact that they were reported as trespassings and not burglaries. To which the defense attorney replied, so therefore you concluded there was no burglary, and he replies, that's correct. So then they go on to discuss what a burglary actually entails. He asked him, is it your belief that something actually has to be taken for it to be considered a burglary? And then they discuss what a burglary is. And here is where the special investigator touches on something that I've actually brought up in a previous video, where he says, true, but at no time was he interrupted and he didn't steal anything, so I don't think you can establish by a point of law that his intention was to steal something if he had been there multiple times without taking anything and he left without taking anything. Now, I've brought this up in another one of my videos because people were saying that, oh, it was safe to assume that Arbery was committing a burglary. And they were also saying that they believed that it was him that had been there at the house those times before, the ones where they had caught somebody on camera and they assumed it to be Arbery. Well, the problem with that is that how are you going to assume that he's there to commit a burglary if you've seen him there and you're assuming that it is him that's been there a number of times before and nothing was ever taken? Then they go on to discuss the other people that have been seen on video coming in there, the couple and the kids, and whether or not he was aware that English had claimed anything had been taken in the past, where the special investigator maintains that up until now he hasn't seen any evidence to show that English had made statements like that. Special investigator goes on to say that according to Greg McMichael's own statement on February 11th, that he knew nothing had been taken that day and that he wasn't aware of anything being taken prior, that it's possible that something may have been taken early on, but that he had no proof of that. Now, in my last video, I covered somewhere towards the end the claims that Roddy Bryan had made about Travis McMichael and the statements, the racist, derogatory statements that he had made after the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery. He then goes on to ask the special investigator, well, when this came about, did Roddy Bryan bring it up to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or did they ask him specifically about if there were any remarks that were made, in which he says that Roddy Bryan was the one who brought it up at one of the interviews that they had. As expected, the defense attorney asks him, well, you know, why wasn't it brought up in any earlier interviews that you guys have had? Now, the special investigator says that the interview that they had prior to the one where he revealed this was about a specific instance in the event that took place, and that this may be why it wasn't shared at that point, but he can't say for sure why it hadn't been shared up until the point that it had been shared. So the defense attorney then asks, well, was there any promises of leniency at the time made by his department for Mr. Roddy Bryan? Any promises that, you know, they might go easier on him if he were to reveal certain things about that? To which the special investigator said no, that to his knowledge, there was no promises of leniency that had been made whatsoever. Then, in what I can only see as an attempt to get ahead of it, he asks him if there were any other statements like that that have been uncovered in the investigation, to which the special investigator replies, yes, several times. Some of those examples being, apparently there was an Instagram video that was sent to him where he commented, that would have only been better if they had blown that N-word's head off. And that was found on his phone and on Instagram. Then another one was, he loves his job because he's out on a boat and there weren't any N-words anywhere, showing that this guy definitely has a racist past and a racist line of behavior that can be followed. Then the defense attorney moves on to whether or not the special investigator was aware that people in the neighborhood, including the McMichaels, were under the belief that things had been taken from the house, in which he brings up the $2,500 or so worth of fishing gear that people have claimed that English was saying was taken from the house. When he discussed this with English, English was saying that he doesn't know where it was taken from, that he had been moving the boat from one property to another, and that the time in which it was actually taken was a little bit it was undetermined when it was actually taken, that he had it at another property at a certain point where he thought it may have been the people installing the HVAC system that could have taken it. But Special Investigator Dial says that not to his knowledge or any of his agents has anybody claimed that English told them that things had been stolen from the house. As for Travis McMichael, was he aware or was he under the belief that things had been taken from the house? To which the special investigator replied he was aware of those claims, and that's why he pulled the reports from the prior 6 months to the event to see what had happened, what had taken place, what had actually been reported in the neighborhood. Then the defense attorney asks the special investigator, are you aware of Greg McMichael saying that he was informed that anything had been taken from the house? Where again, the special investigator reiterates the fact that Greg McMichael, according to his own statement on February 11th, said that he knew nothing had been taken on that night and that he wasn't aware of anything being taken prior to that. And that if anything had been taken, that it must have been early on, but that he didn't have any proof of that. The attorney making comments and asking questions, trying to establish, what their intent was behind what they were doing, their actions that were carried out, whether or not they were actually trying to conduct a citizen's arrest on the person that they believed committing these acts in their neighborhood. Special investigator says that he wasn't concerned with what their intent was, that his only concern was whether or not their actions were legal. Special investigator goes on to clarify those acts as trying to stop a person, ordering that person to get on the ground, and subsequently killing that person. He quickly moves on from that, and that's when he starts asking about Ahmaud Arbery's mental state. Now, despite an objection from the prosecutor, the judge allows it based on the way that he's framing the questions. Now, what I think he's trying to do here is use these statements in support of his self-defense argument. The special investigator says that he was previously being treated, but at the time of the incident occurring, he was no longer being treated to his knowledge. The defense attorney going on to ask the special investigator whether or not he was actually trying to determine in his investigation whether or not it was a case of self-defense. Special investigator Dial letting him know that he was less concerned with proving that hypothesis than collecting the facts. He really was just focused on collecting the facts of the investigation. Continuing down the line of the self-defense argument, he then starts talking about in the video where you can see Ahmaud Arbery striking Travis McMichael. They talk about the statements given by Gregory McMichael in which he only recalls 2 shots when there were actually 3 shots, and that Greg McMichael claimed that Travis was struck before he ever fired the first shot. There's a problem with that though. Since he only recalls 2 shots out of the 3 shots, he's actually talking about the second shot and saying that he was striking him before the second shot because he didn't hear that first shot. And this goes to show you that it doesn't matter whether or not you're a police officer, whether or not you have training, that memories are not perfect. When we try to recall events, especially an event as chaotic as this, we don't remember things correctly. The defense attorney then jumping back to the events that took place on February 11, in which Travis McMichael saw somebody he claimed to have been Arbery outside the house and then actually running into the house where they had that whole interaction. He called 911. He was trying to ascertain whether or not the special investigator was aware of Travis McMichael's mental state on that night. Now, the special investigator says he can't recall any statements made by Travis McMichael in regards to his mental state. I do remember the 911 call in which the operator actually asks Travis McMichael, "Are you okay?" And Travis McMichael responds with, "Yes, it just startled him because whenever he went to go run back in, or when he went to go back up, he was grabbing at his pants or his pocket or something to that effect, in which it led him to believe that the person might be armed, so that he was frazzled whenever that happened." Moving on from that, they start talking about the footage that was taken from across of the house under construction, the one that was from the neighbor, where it actually shows, it's the first video that shows Ahmaud Arbery entering into frame. He asks him whether or not he can recall whether Ahmaud Arbery was running or jogging when he entered the frame. The special investigator says that he can't recall whether or not he was running or jogging is right when he entered the frame, to which the defense attorney says, "You gave testimony saying that he was out jogging, and what, now you don't remember that you said that he was jogging?" And the special investigator snaps back that that's not the question you asked. You asked whether or not I could recall what he was doing when he entered the frame, not whether or not he was out jogging, because whether or not he was out jogging is independent from what he was doing at the time he entered the frame. Now, they go on to discuss a little bit more details about this portion of the event in which the neighbor actually calls, and you can see him on the video where he comes out, he calls 911. We've heard the recording where he's saying that there's somebody in the house, that it's an ongoing thing out here, and that's when the defense attorney asks him, "Well, are you aware of whether or not this person called out to Ahmaud Arbery when he was in the house?" The special investigator says that to his knowledge, this didn't happen, that he didn't call out to him when he was in the house. And in fact, if you're listening to the 911 call in which he says, "Oh, I'm over here, there's somebody in the house," you can hear him on the call say, "Oh, there he goes, he's going, he's running right there." No time from the beginning of the 911 call until he said, "Oh, there he goes, he's running now," did you ever hear him call out to Ahmaud Arbery. After that, then they move on to the point in which Ahmaud Arbery was running in front of Greg McMichael's house. Then he goes on to ask him whether or not Greg McMichael thought at the time he saw Ahmaud Arbery running in front of his house, whether or not he thought that Ahmaud Arbery was the person that was involved in these other acts taking place in the neighborhood. Investigator Dial says that according to Gregory McMichael's statements, that he did feel that he was the person involved, but that he used a gut feeling to come to this conclusion, that he wasn't using anything more than his just intuition that he was the same person that was involved in these other events. The defense attorney then asks whether or not he thinks it would be significant if Larry Englsih had told Greg McMichael that things had been taken from the house in October or November area of 2019. To which the special investigator replies, "That would be astonishing, seeing how that Gregory McMichael has already stated that he was aware that nothing had been taken from the house on February 11th, and that he wasn't aware of anything being taken prior to that it could have been, and that if he did give statements saying that Larry Englsih had told him things had been taken from the house, then that would be a change of statement from the statement he gave on the day of the murder." After that, they come to the point where Gregory McMichael, Travis McMichael are in the truck, and Ahmaud Arbery and them go by in front of Roddy Bryan's house. Now, at this point, Roddy Bryan apparently has a motion-activated surveillance camera. So whenever they did come out in front of his house, that camera turned on, but because it's motion-activated, it only caught a certain portion of it, but it was enough to see what kind of actions they were taking. And apparently, whenever they came out in front, Roddy Bryan, according to his statement, called out to them, "You got him?" Special investigator then talks about some of the actions taken by Ahmaud Arbery. His actions tell a story that he was trying to get away from the McMichaels. When they were going in a certain direction, he was heading away from the truck. When it looks like they began to back up, Ahmaud Arbery stopped, turned, and went the other way and started running back down away from Satilla Drive. Now, somewhere in the attempts of Roddy Bryan trying to block Ahmaud Arbery or cut him off, detain him, whatever words that you want to use, there was contact between Roddy Bryan's truck and Ahmaud Arbery. They have confirmed this not only by the statements made by Roddy Bryan, but also they lifted white cotton fibers from the bed liner in the back of the truck. They also found right below that a dent that they are attributing to Ahmaud Arbery making contact with the truck. Roddy Bryan claims at this point that he was afraid that Ahmaud Arbery might be going for the handle, so he gunned the truck in an attempt to separate or make distance between him and Ahmaud Arbery. The defense attorney then asks the special investigator whether or not Roddy Bryan had explained that he feared that Ahmaud Arbery was going to try and take the truck from him. Now, this next interaction between the defense attorney and the special investigator was pretty interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and play you the clip of it rather than explaining what happened so that you guys can get a better idea of the context and the demeanor of the two interacting between each other.
Did he explain what he was thinking or feeling as Mr. Arbery was trying to reach in the truck, whether he was fearful or that he thought Mr. Arbery was trying to steal his truck or carjack him or anything like that?
I don't recall him even making any kind of statement of that. But that is, again, after he's trying to block him in. And subsequent to that, he continued to pursue him and try to block him in.
Okay, fair. But you're saying there's no statement by Mr. Bryan that he feared Mr. Arbery was trying to get in his truck?
I'm saying I don't recall any statement that I have reviewed of that.
Okay. Do you need your case file? Because a lot of the answers we're starting to get are, I don't remember, I don't recall.
No, sir. I did not do the interview with Mr. Bryan, so I cannot answer something that I have not reviewed the recording of or the interview of him. You're asking me, has he said that? I can only tell you to what I have knowledge of.
All right. So you haven't really completed your review of even the video and the interview of Mr. Bryan?
Sir, my agent has interviewed him. He's reported back to me of what it is. He has to complete a report, which is attached. And then at that point, I will sign off on the report and attach it. That's part of the process. However, you're asking me specific details about an interview that I was not present at, nor did I review a video on. So I cannot be definitive to say he has not said something if I was not there. I do not want to misspeak.
I got it. And now I understand that you haven't reviewed the video of the interview. I understand that.
Sir, I don't even know if there is a video. It could have been audio of the interview my agent did with him.
Okay, but I now understand you haven't reviewed that yet, and that's why your answer is I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At this point, this is when they note that the video recording that Roddy Bryan had taken on his phone was actually longer than the version that we had seen. It started a lot earlier, but he had to put the phone down at some point. So actually the officer Minshew, the one who was the first officer on scene, was the one that later came back with Roddy Bryan, shortened the video to the part that he thought was most relevant, and in order to send it off or upload it in some way, which actually failed. He didn't actually do that, but he was the one who shortened the video to the part that he thought was relevant. Now we're going to move to the point where the video starts, where you can see Ahmaud Arbery approaching the McMichael's truck. And then they're going to talk about what Travis McMichael did and what you can see on the new stabilized version of the video that we all seen that was very blurry and grainy, shaky, all of those things. Special Investigator Dial says that in the stabilized version that you can see as Ahmaud Arbery is running up to the back of the truck, Travis McMichael actually stops, aims the gun at Ahmaud Arbery, pointing it at him, and at that moment, that is one of the moments that constitutes aggravated assault. They reference again what Travis McMichael was thinking at the time based on his training, saying that 30 to 40 yards away, he knew that Ahmaud Arbery wasn't going to stop, that he was going to, quote, fight, and he was going to keep coming. They discuss whether or not Travis McMichael had been struck before he fired the first shot, to which Travis McMichael admits that he cannot recall whether or not he was struck. He says that it's possible that Ahmaud Arbery had him by the shirt or was attempting to grab the gun, but that in the confusion of everything that he can't recall whether or not he was struck or touched before he actually fired the first shot. Now, Gregory McMichael claims that, but remember, he is misremembering the events that took place. He is only recalling 2 of those shots when there were in fact 3 shots. They talk about the shots in particular and which one was the first shot. Now, according to some of the evidence that they've uncovered in the video and Travis McMichael's statements himself, the first shot was the one to the chest. That was the first shot. Travis McMichael admitted to firing the first shot. He said that it was in the chest. And then they also went over the evidence that you can see a red spot on Ahmaud Arbery's white t-shirt as he turns in the video. Now, at this point, this is when the defense attorney asks this question. Is the distance of movement of Mr. Arbery kind of overpowering Mr. McMichael back across the street? Have you calculated how far he had to push him out of view? And at that point, that's when the special investigator Dial says that he doesn't think that he was overpowering him, that according to Travis McMichael's own statements, that at that point he had started retreating backwards. The attorney then asks, did he then say that he had his hand on the gun and was trying to take it away? To which the special investigator clarifies that he said that he had his hand on the gun, but that he didn't say that he was trying to take it away. This is something that you also have to pay attention to. When an investigator goes into a case, he should be trying to figure out what are the facts about this case and what is that going to lead to. The difference between him and a defense attorney is trying to make a particular narrative fit the evidence. They're trying to make the evidence fit a particular narrative. They then talk about how Travis McMichael admitted to firing the second and third shot, claiming that it was self-defense against Mr. Arbery due to the fact that he was being struck. So now for this last portion of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the things stated by the special investigator to the defense attorney, because honestly, he says it better than I could relay it to you guys. And then that will be the end of the video, and I'll go ahead and comment on the rest of it. But this is what the special investigator had to say towards the end of their discussion.
My specific fact that I based the warrant on and I provided it would be that the aggravated assault occurred when Travis McMichael pointed a 12-gauge Remington 870 shotgun at Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay, when he pointed the firearm, and you described that as when he was standing next to his truck and Mr. Arbery was running towards him and he held the gun up like this when he was saying stop and get down? That
is one instance, and then Travis McMichael indicates that he was pointing the shotgun at Ahmaud Arbery as he was approaching him at the front of the truck as well.
It's your decision then as you move forward through the case that you are of the opinion that this was not self-defense by Mr. McMichael.
I don't believe it was self-defense by Mr. McMichael. I believe it was self-defense by Mr. Arbery.
Okay, that's why you took the warrants the way you took the warrants.
Yes, sir. I believe Mr. Arbery was being pursued, and he ran until he couldn't run anymore, and it was turning back to a man with a shotgun or fight with his bare hands against a man with a shotgun, and he chose to fight.
And not to run through a side yard or not to run through another yard or anything like that?
I think his thing was to, I believe Mr. Arbery's decision was to just try to get away, and when he felt like he could not escape, he chose to fight.
All right, guys, so that's all I'm going to be going over in this video. It did get a little bit more lengthy than I had originally planned, but I wanted to share all of the important salient information with you guys, and I wanted to relay that in the best, most understandable way possible. Now, I probably have at least 1 or 2 more videos coming out covering the other defense attorneys' positions and their arguments against why they said that the warrant shouldn't have been issued in the first place. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching my video. Like the video if you liked it. Share this if you really want to support the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more content like this. And make sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below and let me know any thoughts. You can give me thoughts on the Ahmaud Arbery case, any of the stuff going on with George Floyd, COVID-19, or you can give me a comment on the video, things that you didn't like about it or things that you did like. As always, this is Inspiring Inquiry.